Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. Hope you're having a great day as we continue to enjoy celebrating so much of what makes Mississippi so special. What a great place to live, work, and play. Listen, I've got some really challenging weather coming, so everybody stay tuned. It's been like that. It's been a weird season. Ann said to me yesterday morning, we don't know whether to turn the heater on at night or the air conditioner on at night. It's been kind of strange, but we will fast enough get to the spring, and the seasons change, and we enjoy that as the flowers come out and leaves start popping out all over the place. Coastal Mississippi and Mississippi, for that matter, begin to change in pretty dramatic ways. Listen, it's Friday, so we're going to get it right over to our friend Jeff Duncan, a columnist for NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune, and someone who's been a regular on this show for 5 years. Amazing to think about that. Jeff, how you doing, my friend?
Ricky, I'm doing good. I will say this about the weather. I'll take this any day over the dog days of July and August, right?
Woo! Man, aren't you right? Aren't you right? People say, don't I love going offshore in like August and July and August. And yeah, actually the beginning of July is some great fishing. You got to dodge thunderstorms and so on. But as you get a little bit further into July and then into August, it's so hot. It's so difficult to be offshore fishing during those times. And you would think that, it's right in the middle of the summer that we'd love to go out there. But it tends not to be our favorite time of the year. We like actually early summer, end of May, June, first part of July, and then maybe later, in September, October. Of course, then you're dodging, storms at that time of the year. But yeah, it's brutal, and it's especially brutal in the French Quarter and areas of New Orleans where the buildings are, kind of prohibiting the wind from getting in there, and it can be really, really tough. New Orleans can be steamy, man.
Well, I think of, that's late July. August is always training camp time for the Saints. So just think about being out on a football field in that weather and full pads. It's brutal. Now you know why so many times over the years the Saints have gone away to camp, whether it's Florida or West Virginia or Wisconsin, last year California. I think they're going to stay home this year, as we all thought. But it's just to get out of that heat. It's just so... Yeah. It just smothers you, and to be able to concentrate on what you're trying to get accomplished to practice in that weather is very difficult.
Well, listen, you and I did speculate a little bit about this, the climate scenario for training camp last year in California was really awesome. And of course, the reason they went was because they were doing capital improvements at the training facility, not the least of which was the new cafeteria and all of that. But we did wonder, would they stay away so they could keep the team focused? But I guess they told us the truth when they went, that it was just to avoid the construction.
Yeah, I think they would prefer to go away, to be honest with you, but it's just an expensive proposition. It's multi-million-dollar expense that if you can avoid, you do. Obviously, they have an indoor training facility that makes it, compatible to practice in with. When you have those pop-up storms like we have, Ricky, and that's the problem, is the weather here, not just the heat, but you also have the pop-up storms that force them inside and outside, and they have to constantly negotiate between fields. It's difficult. Whereas you don't. When we were in California, literally every day was sunny and 70. There was no humidity. It was just perfect. They never had to worry about any of that. So I see why they want to go out there and why they like it, but it is very expensive.
Hey, listen, you spent a lot of time there. Obviously, I've had the opportunity to go there. The indoor training facility is terrific. My thing that I wonder about when I'm there is, do they regret not making that bigger? I wonder if they ever think about that.
Oh, yeah, there's no question. When they built it back, it was back in 99, I think, 2000.
So it's really been that long, right?
Yeah, it's been like 25 years. I was talking to some Saints people the other day about it, because it was when Jim Haslett, who I just wrote a column on, his son's now joining the Saints staff, and Jim was the head coach then when Randy Mueller was the general manager when they opened that facility. It's hard to believe it's been 25 years since they came in, but yeah, I get back then. It didn't know. They didn't. Obviously, it's like everything out at Saints facility. They've outgrown all the building. It's one of the reasons they've had trouble with the parking situation, frankly, is they've just got so many more employees. They don't have enough parking spaces.
Yeah. Well, I remember, you know this, and maybe some of the listeners haven't heard us talk about it, but when I was visiting the administration of the Saints, and Mickey Loomis and I walked out to look at his little balcony, this adjacent to his office, overlooking the outdoor training facility. He was super proud of it, But you would have thought that would have been just part of the deal from the beginning, that that would just be a natural extension of their offices that would look out over the training facility. But, I would bet that they probably, the new cafeteria has been well received, but you would think that big capital improvements are coming there.
Well, that was our first chance Monday. We had a meet and greet with the Saints coaches, and it was my first chance to get into the new cafeteria and into the new viewing area, the second floor above the cafeteria that looks out over the indoor practice facility, and it's spectacular. I mean, the new cafeteria is much bigger. It's as nice as any in the league. They won't be getting low grades on that NFLPA survey anymore, I can guarantee you that. And it's a really nice space up above where now the executives like Mickey Loomis and Jeff Ireland, the front office, if you will, they can come and be up there and overlook the practice facility. I've been lobbying, futilely might add, to get a viewing area for the media up there, because where we have to watch those indoor practices, you can't see anything. You're from down on the field. You're stuck over in the corner. It's probably by design, to be honest with you. But it would be nice to be able to see from above the practices, because it's very difficult, especially for cameras and videographers, photographers, to get good angles. It's really kind of futile in that facility.
Well, I haven't been to the new cafeteria, but I've seen great video walkthroughs, literally stopping at each food station, showing the real enhancements that they made to, the choices that the players have and all that. And it's true, man. What they had before, it was about as basic can be. No wonder they were getting poor marks.
Yeah, and I think now, you have everything. I can't imagine they're going to get bad reviews. But, there's a little bit of an issue there in that, they would keep it open. One of the reasons they were getting bad reviews was that it wasn't open after hours. But in their defense, the organization's defense, a lot of players weren't using it. They were keeping this thing open for a while, and staffing, keeping cooks and chefs in there, and in attendance, paying a lot of money, not to mention the food, and it wasn't being used. As a former CEO, you understand that. At some point, you have to do a cost-benefit analysis, and it wasn't paying off for them. So they got tabbed for that, but I think it was kind of unfair, to be honest with you.
Listen, with Jim Haslett, the former coach of the Saints, you mentioned him just a second ago, with his son playing for the Saints, it really has given you a chance to reflect on the history of the Saints. And you actually wrote a column about this opportunity it gave you. What did you learn about Jim Haslett? Talk to us about what you wrote about.
Well, I visited with him and his wife, Beth, who I got to know both, obviously, when he was here. That was my first job covering the Saints in 2000 as a beat writer when Jim came in with Randy Mueller. I didn't know them from Adam, and really got to know them during their 6-year tenure, I think it was. And I was reflecting with Jim and Beth yesterday just about how I think they're a little underappreciated, I think, by the Saints fan base. Unfairly so, I believe. Jim was the coach of the year in the entire NFL in 2000, led a dramatic turnaround. They went from 3-13, were a laughing stock in the league, to going 10-6, winning the division, beating the defending Super Bowl champions. He's named coach of the year. Randy Mueller is named executive of the year. And they win the first playoff game in franchise history by beating the defending Super Bowl champions. So, to me, and they had a good coaching staff. Mike McCarthy was the offensive coordinator on that staff. Ron Zook, Al Everest, Steve Gleason will tell you that Al Everest is the best coach he ever had. So I think for some reason they've gotten that period of time has gotten lumped in by a lot of Saints fans with the Ditka years, and it's really unfair because they brought back credibility and restored competency in the front office and on the field. They had good coaches and good players. They were around 500 most of the time after that year, but it wasn't like they were 3-13, which is the way people tend to remember those years.
And you know what's interesting, though? I think a contributing factor to this, I think, is very significant, actually. You may or may not agree, but I think Katrina's hitting and sort of how the whole deck got reshuffled and people's memories faded and all that pre-Katrina war. It's almost like they forgot where they were. That in the post-Katrina effort, we had the emergence of the Saints and the Drew Brees and Sean Payton era. And some people it's hard for them to remember those days.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I try to point out, like, it was Jim Haslett and Randy Mueller that drafted Will Smith. They brought in Deuce McAllister. They signed a lot of good players. Steve Gleason came in under their tenure. So, like, a lot of players who were a part of those great Saints teams under Brees and Payton were brought in from the previous regime. So it's just, I understand they were frustrated because they didn't get back to the playoffs. They came close and didn't do it. But they restored credibility to the organization. I think it should be respected.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Jeff Duncan, find out the latest on the Saints. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show. Hope you're having a great day today. In fact, the second half of the show, Caleb Sailors from the SuperTalk Mississippi News Team is going to be joining us. So let's get back to Jeff Duncan, columnist, award-winning columnist on the NFL Hall of Fame Selection Committee from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. Hey, listen, before we move away, you mentioned Will Smith's name. I think about Will a lot. He was shot and killed while I was there.
Mm-hmm.
Man, he was such a good leader of the Saints. He had such a great legacy. What a terrible way to go out.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tragedy, and it's kind of a good example of like how a flash of anger, just a brief moment can change, impact so many people. I mean, I think about Rocky, his wife, and their children. They moved out of the Louisiana area. She's born and raised in Lafayette because they couldn't continue to live in this environment. It was too difficult for them to keep grieving that way. And it was just tragic for both parties involved. Their lives ruined there.
Yeah, it's just, gosh, so sad. He made such a great impact on the Saints. And
he was a tough dude, man. He was tough.
He was
one of the toughest players I ever covered.
When I think of Cam Jordan, Jeff, I think of Will Smith. I think there's a lot of similarities in the two guys. But you said that the amount of money that was on the table still for Cam Jordan, you'd be very surprised if he didn't come back.
Oh, yeah. I thought this would get worked out. All these contract negotiations, it always cracks me up every year, Ricky. Like, everyone, we breathlessly, I guess this is just the day and age we're in. I'm showing my age a little bit, but like, I was just lamenting last night to some of my colleagues. I said, everybody does this every year. We know they have to get under the cap. We know they've got to make these contract restructures. Everybody prepares prepares the readers for it. And then everyone breathlessly reports on every one of them when we all knew it was going to happen. I mean, it's a blueprint that they've been following for the last decade or so.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. And listen, they've been playing in the free agency market. We lost Paul Debo. I'm not terribly surprised by that. And we picked up a good free agent.
Yeah, Justin Reed, the safety, was a really good signing. I mean, he had a lot of suitors. He's from this area, was up in Destrehan, played at Dutchtown High School, brother of Eric Reed that played at LSU. And he's a good player. Now, he's up in age a little bit. He's around 30, which, a lot of times is kind of a difficult age to sign a free agent. But he's playing his best football as he's gotten older. He's a really smart guy, went to Stanford. And he'll team with Tyrann Mathieu and I think really be an upgrade to that other safety spot. And talking to Brandon Staley, the new defensive coordinator last week, he's very big on versatility and flexibility in his players. And that's exactly what Justin Reed is. He's a guy, kind of a chess piece that he can move around in different spots. He'll be a key guy for Brandon Staley. I think that was why they went so aggressively for him.
Listen, speaking of Tyrann Mathieu, you keep thinking – he's going to get injured because of his age, or he's lost some step, but seems like he plays smarter. There doesn't seem to be any stop in him, does there?
Well, he's just, you said smarter. I mean, he's one of the smartest players I've ever covered. He knows he's lost a step. He knows more than anybody. That's why he lost weight. I think we talked about that last year. He got down to like 185. I mean, that's light for an NFL player. But he knew he had to, as we all do, right? When we start getting older, Ricky, you got to lose weight because we don't have the muscle mass. And, he's just such a smart player. I mean, I'm so glad he's going to continue to play because I love covering him, love watching him, I love his insight. He's great for us in the locker room. He's just a real good leader. That was a great signing by the Saints. I know he hasn't been the Pro Bowl player he was early in his career, but they didn't expect that. He's delivering exactly what they wanted.
His story, which I watched closely, most Saints fans did, but his story from from having issues with drugs and all of that, and peer pressure in New Orleans, and all the kind of grown-up decisions he made early in his life to change who surrounds him, to get clean, and to set off on a new course for his life. He literally achieved that goal, didn't he?
Yes, and I think it was good for him to get away from Louisiana initially when he drafted by the Arizona Cardinals. He got out there with Patrick Peterson. He said that was a transformative time in his career. And look, he blossomed into a Pro Bowler. I mean, he's going to be a guy we consider for the Hall of Fame when he eventually retires. I've talked to him about that. He's certainly going to be worthy of consideration. And the Saints have a few of those guys with Cam Jordan as well, and maybe even Demario Davis. It's going to be interesting to see. But they're great leaders. I know that's a big thing. Talking to the Saints' new coaching staff Monday, and that was really a lot of fun visiting with them. I have to say I was very impressed with that whole group. They're very ambitious. They're very young. They got a bunch of good guys, Ricky. It's one thing that got me a little worried is it's a bunch of good guys. And I know that sounds crazy to say I'm worried about it, but they're so nice. They're so laid back. You just wonder, like, is there anybody here going to ever yell at anybody? Is there going to be anybody hold somebody accountable? But I'll say the thing that's impressed me the most, talking to the coaches, how much they believe in Kellen Moore. Chase Hazlett's a good example. He had a chance to stay in Dallas and double his salary and a promotion. And he said, you know what, I appreciate that, but I want to go follow Kellen Moore. That's how much I believe in him, and came here to be the tight ends coach. That says a lot. And he wasn't the only one that followed him as well, Brandon Staley. I think that speaks highly of Kellen Moore at such a young age that he's made that kind of impression on his peers.
Listen, gosh, it's interesting because I had forgotten to ask you about the meeting with the coaches. When you're with them, you talk about young, youthful. And as you and I get older, we look at other people and they may not necessarily be super young, but they seem young to us. They just seem young to us. But this group is literally young.
Yeah.
You sense it tremendously when you're around them. They look young.
Yeah,
they're obviously all transformational leaders, but the reality is it's got to be a little bit shocking.
I think it's also by design, by the front office, by Mickey Loomis. They wanted young, energetic coaches in the building. And it's a breath of fresh air, I think, that they're from kind of the outside. Like I mentioned it the other day, Kellen Moore went to Boise State. He's got 3 former Idaho Vandals on the staff, Scott Linehan, Doug Nussmeier, running backs coach Joel Thomas. Those are big rivals out there. Boise State and Idaho. That's like LSU, Alabama, and it's funny. They're kidding about it, but they're all from the Pacific Northwest. All these guys. It's kind of refreshing, to hear a different, even a different accent in the building, and they come in with a completely fresh perspective. It's just so funny. Brandon Staley talking about, I'm so excited about being a part of the Saints organization. He goes, they're one of the premier organizations in the league. We all from the outside would look at them with such class and reverence. It's interesting to hear that because they've been getting knocked around, right, locally so much. So I do think that's promising if you're a Saints fan, just to hear people are excited about being in the building and potentially trying to get back on track and get back into the playoffs and lead this team to a Super Bowl.
Well, listen, you mentioned Tyrann Mathieu, and when I think about Alvin Kamara, I think about how well-read he is, how smart he is, how philosophical he is, literally a philosopher. And to some extent, I think Tyrann Mathieu is exactly the same way. But in his way, he's like that. Not as crisp a communicator as Alvin can be, but still very insightful, et cetera. I wonder what they think. I mean, as they think about now another offense coming in, and as it relates to the defense, a very significantly changed defense. How do they view all this?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're pros, right? I mean, they've been through it before, I'm sure. I mean, Tyrann especially, more than Alvin. But yeah, they know they're gonna have to bone up. I mean, that's what's going on right now in that building. Is the Saints coaches are installing, putting together the offense and defensive game plans. What systems they're going to use. And I don't think I may be wrong about this, but just talking to Staley, I don't think it's locked down he's going to be in a 3-4 scheme. Everybody's gotten caught into that. Mm-hmm. He's not committed to that when I've talked to him, and I think he wants to see what players they end up with, and then use the scheme to adjust to the personnel, which is very smart. So I know everyone's caught up in that, but I think it's so overrated. I talked to you last year about the Saints scheme that Kubiak brought in. The X's and O's get way too much play these days. I mean, there's so many systems. It's not about the X's and O's. It's about the players and the coaches. It's just a scheme, and I think people are caught up right now on that.
Hey, we're almost out of time, but I meant to ask you. I saw your tweet about cornerback. We used to have all of them, and then I don't remember exactly how you wrote about it, but now it's an area where we need to really focus. You have a level of concern about that?
No, not at all. I mean, I think it's going to be an important position, though. I think they could draft one very high, but it's a good year to get them in the draft. And I don't think they have to use the number 9 pick in the first round to get a starter. You can get a starter in the second round, but it's definitely gone from a strength to an area of concern. They're going to have to address it here in the next few months.
Hey, I was looking at the plethora of picks they have this year. They've got some real opportunities.
More picks than they've had since, I think, 2015 was the last time. So let Jeff Ireland and his staff have those picks. I'm a big believer in that. I know they like to trade these picks away, Ricky. I think let that staff have as many shots and bites at the apple as they can. They're very good. It's one of the strengths of the organization is that college personnel scouting department. Let them get some young players on this roster. They have to get younger and more athletic, more draft picks.
Again, we talked about this at the end of last week's show, and we're saying it again this week. It's going to be fun to watch. It's a bit of a cleaning of the house. In a couple of years from now, the Saints are going to be a much younger team, especially because of the draft picks that we're doing, especially if they finally score on some of those. We got a lot to look forward to. But I can't wait to continue the conversation with you as we go forward.
I agree. It's refreshing, and I think it's a good reason for Saints fans to be excited right now. I know it's been some tough few years, but they got a young, good, ambitious young coaching staff, and I think they got a plan out there, Ricky, which is good to hear.
That's going to be fun. Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and Times-Picayune. Enjoyed your visit, buddy.
All right, Ricky. We'll talk next week, bud.
Have a great weekend. Hey, when we come back, Caleb Sailors is going to be joining us from the SuperTalk Mississippi News team. See you after this.